Kelsie, I'm a freshman, I'm a nursing major, and my goal is to become a pediatric specialized CRNA.
Dylan Weber, I'm a biology psychology double major, and I would like to become a neuro-oncologist.
Jacque, I'm a nursing major and rugby player.
Alanna, international business, 19, Christian.
Sex, male or female, heterosexuality, sexual attraction to the opposite sex, homosexuality, sexual attraction to the same sex. In society, we see them as mutually exclusive, but in reality, they're on a continuum, and our sexuality is kind of, mixed together as a non-discrete human sexuality. Laud Humphreys conducted the Tea Study Act. He stationed himself as a lookout outside of tea rooms or public restrooms in which homosexual men were often arrested for performing fellatio, only to find that 54% of these men were married with children, not the hypersexualized social deviants they were made out to be. They just weren't openly gay so as not to be seen as monsters. Sexuality is continuous, but we make it discreet. Brink of Tears presents Tigers Fight for Old Mizzou.
The word homosexuality actually came into existence in the late 1800s, and it was first defined as a deviant behavior in the early 1890s. So this is a relatively recent term. Heterosexuality actually came along later. During the same piece that defined homosexuality, heterosexuality was defined as well, and it was actually defined as a morbid sexual attraction.
As a pre-med, my daily life is heavily influenced by biology, and recently in one of my psychology classes, we've started to look at the underlying causes of sexuality. The factual-based cause of differing sexuality is partially attributed to the presence of prenatal testosterone and other hormone levels. There are very few biologists who will admit that biology 100% defines sexuality. Social constructivism plays a huge part because the upbringing of the individual really almost dictates whether or not they choose to express those deviant feelings.
A lot of people think this about all female athletes, but we get this stereotype a whole lot on my team, given the nature of the sport, that we are lesbians. And that's not an insult. It's like saying, oh, I see you prefer cats over dogs. It's not a big thing.
Society has created a complicated set of norms, which it sets apart the normal from the unnormal in society. And everyone who participates in the unnormal or deviant behaviors is then defined as morally wrong.
People get turned off by certain verses in the Bible, like this one, Leviticus 18:22, which says, "Do not lie with a man as one lies with a woman. That is detestable." We look at Leviticus 18:22, and we soon forget Ephesians 4:2, which says, "Be completely humble and gentle, be patient, bearing with one another," and that verse tells us, it commands us to love each other. Methodologically, skeptically, if you remove everything that you learned from the table, then you would see that this is not the job of a Christian or anybody else to define homosexuality as sin. And what we need to do, according to Descartes, is get rid of that and wipe it off the table. And what we need to replace it with, I think, is the idea that we need to love each other and be respectful, and that judging anybody else for their sexuality is not our job.
So these activist groups on campus, they definitely encourage true identification with how a person identifies, but I don't feel like that's the true social issue that we need to be addressing at this point, because so readily in our society is science used to mistakenly defend these social constructs that we have on what defines sexuality and what makes a person identify with that social construct, and etc.
Where I come from is a very small town, and not even 8 years ago it was okay for my older brother and the rest of the football team to pull boys out of their trucks in parking lots that they thought were gay and just beat the crap out of them. That was a socially acceptable thing.
The term for that, actually, assuming that the whole team is lesbian, is called falsely accused deviance, and there's actually been a study on how often that occurs to female athletes. And there's a lot of people who try to fight it, a lot of women who try to fight it, because they do something called stigma management, where they try to act differently so that they don't fall into the category of lesbian, so that people won't call them a lesbian. And I don't do that.
I feel like the battle needs to start with delegitimizing the social definition of sexuality. Because there are so, even within the categorization of homosexuality, there's queer, there's lesbian, transgenders often fall into this category, and it's unfortunate because there isn't something that necessarily defines each one of these sub-classifications. When you start allowing these organizations and these groups to define who you are, you're also letting your sexuality define who you are. And that plays into these constructed categorizations because you are accepting them, because you're thinking that makes you more prideful about yourself, but you're really just buying into these already socially constructed theories and ideologies. And I 100% feel that the battle needs to start with breaking those classifications down.
I don't think it matters at all. Like, I don't have to justify myself. And I don't have to, like, why do you care if I'm gay or not? Why should I even tell you? It doesn't matter. I'm me.
It's so deeply ingrained in our society, like, to divide these people from everyone else, that it will take years and years and years just to get past the point where we can even bridge the gap between these two socially constructed categories. And in all honesty, it probably will never even be bridged.
One Mizzou. We're all tigers, but what colors are the stripes? Are they rainbow or are they black and white?
Because society made sexuality a dichotomy and not a spectrum.
And now we have to be put into categories of
homo versus hetero,
Gay versus straight.
And you have to choose between being loved
and lonely.
And people look, but they don't see.
They're blind because they only know.
the cold, convoluted constructs that the 20th century scientists said
Love is allowed to be.
and you have to choose between who
you love
and not just that you do.
Hooray for one Mizzou.
Our hearts are bridges, built bridges to each other, so this river won't take us under. Filled with monsters and goblins, they keep dragging the